I love that question. I was curious to see where our conversation would go, because I love that you asked that question. And it's always interesting. I can tell some people as they respond to it, they're like, I was thinking about this forever. I wanted to talk about this. But it's like, okay, I'm just going to go for it. But like, when I think about what we've talked about how do you learn and where do you go and the journey, all of those things. When I think about unpopular things, and I don't think this will be unpopular to your group, but it's certainly unpopular to common understanding or common expectation, is it's still going to be hard, right? But the hard is good.
This is Sparta!
Welcome back to Spartan Leadership. I'm your host, Josh Kosnick, and this is your podcast for leadership, inspiration, and impact. And today will be no different. Got a great guest joining from Des Moines, Iowa. So fellow Midwest brethren in Mitch Matthews. Let me give him a proper introduction before we kick things off. So Mitch is a coach's coach. He's trained thousands of leaders, entrepreneurs, and high performers to grow businesses that reflect their values without sacrificing integrity or identity in the process. What sets Mitch apart isn't just his business success, it's his willingness to integrate prayer into strategy and faith into the day-to-day of entrepreneurship. He's created frameworks for coaches and speakers to build aligned, purpose-driven businesses. And more importantly, he's lived those frameworks through his own seasons of risk, doubt, and growth. This won't be your typical interview on tactics. This is a conversation about calling, identity, and what it really means to build something that lasts. Mitch, welcome to the show, brother.
Oh my gosh, Josh, I am excited to be here, man. I tell you what, I got up this morning going, yeah, today's the day. So I'm looking forward to this.
No, it's going to be a great conversation. My audience knows that the spiritual life is a big part of my life, but also the coaching framework that I lead through as well. Spiritual Bridge is number one. And again, you and I are talking pre-shows, like not everyone has to agree or believe what you or I believe, but it is important to understand why we exist and that we're not just these flesh and bones, that there is a spiritual component to our lives. So let's jump right in. How did you get into coaching? Like, what life circumstances led you here? Because most coaches got into the business because they didn't have one or they needed one.
Exactly.
And didn't want others to experience maybe some of the mistakes they made.
Yeah, well, that's a version of my story. I can tell you I was a bit of an extreme kid. And so at 12, I was just fanatical about bicycles. And so there was one small bike shop in my town. It was called Marty Schwinn Cyclery. And I lived in a small town in Iowa. And it was full on, Hallmark Christmas kind of movie town with a courthouse and a square and all that. And Marty's was 2 blocks off the square. We were next to the only Goodwill in town and the only strip club in town. So for a 12-year-old, this was the promised land, man. And I went up there and I spent every day of my 12th summer just trying to do stuff so that Marty wouldn't have me arrested for loitering. And, I swept out the alley. I painted trash cans. I mowed his lawn without his permission, all that. And by the end of that summer, he basically decided, well, we're not getting rid of you, so I guess we should hire you. And so I had my first dream job when I was 13. And I worked at that bike shop through college, all of that, and learned so much. And I started because I was passionate about bikes. But, I always say big dreams have back doors. And getting that dream job made me realize I was interested in bikes, but I became passionate about entrepreneurship. And so I learned entrepreneurship. I learned how to sell. I went to my first sales training when I was 14, all of that, and just fell in love with that and sold. I sold my first selling seminar when I was 20. And I just loved that. But then I got into the corporate space. I knew that, maybe that would be my dream someday. That bug kind of bit me, but I thought, you know what, I need to amass some more experience. So I got into business to business sales at first, and then I got into pharmaceutical sales. And really that it was an exciting time to be in pharma. It was a high science sell. It was highly relational. I really enjoyed it. I managed a territory that was the northern half of the Louisiana Purchase. So I had Montana, half of Wyoming, and a chunk of Idaho. So I was in God's country, and my wife and I loved the mountains. So it was perfect. And that I really gelled with that, so much so that I kind of rocketed through kind of the leadership ladder and wound up helping to manage a $2 billion pharmaceutical company's training department. So I really had a career I was loving. And then I got promoted into a bad fit job. And, Josh, I know you've had some good fits and some bad fits, all of that. So you know what that's like. But I got promoted into this bad fit job at a time where we were also living a sitcom life, which was single income, 2 children, oppressive mortgage. My wife was staying home with our 2 boys at that time. So I couldn't just quit. And I was locked in, and my soul started to die. And I can remember I got home one night, and I really credit it being in the coaching world to my wife, because I got home after a really hard day. She knew it was a hard day. And I got home, and there was this business magazine, it was Business Week, laying open. And she goes, "Hey, I want you to see that article." And I look at this magazine, and it's on an entrepreneur. I can't even remember the name of the entrepreneur at the time. He was wildly successful. And I start reading an industry I have no interest in. The guy's story is kind of compelling to me. And she's like, "No, not the main story. Look at that sidebar article." And the sidebar article was all about this famous, successful entrepreneur's coach. I'm like, "What's that? What is that?" And she's like, "That's what you do. That's what you do with people." And that has always been an element of what I do. I, ask questions, listen, I create a safe space for people to dream big, all that. She's like, "That's what you do. We should find out, how do you do that?" And so I started to investigate, how does somebody become a coach? I didn't even know. And I signed up for one of the big name, training programs. It was very expensive. You know how all that stuff works. And it was great from the standpoint of taught me how to coach. But like most programs out there, it taught me nothing about the business of actually building a coaching business. And so I floundered. But I prayed, and I promised, and I said, "God, if you help me do this, I'll turn around and teach other people how to do it," like especially the business side, because I said I could see this tremendous need. There was encouragers needed in the world, like true people that help people to be at their best. I said, but boy, there's not a lot of people who seem to know how to do it from a business standpoint. So he downloaded some strategies to me, and I thought it was going to be 5 years. It wound up being about 5 months. And through his blessing and a lot of guidance and some breakthroughs, we were able to launch a full-time coaching and speaking business in about 5 months. I was able to leave that bad fit job and launch a company, and been doing it ever since. That was 2002. And about 2006, coaches started to find me, speakers started to find me saying, "Hey, what you're doing is working. What are you doing?" And I remembered that prayer. And so I started to do it. And initially, you'll appreciate this, Josh. Initially, I started to do it for free, because I kind of thought that's what, if I promised God, maybe I should do it for free. But I noticed whenever I did it for free, people didn't value it.
They didn't appreciate it. Yep.
Nope. But when I started to charge, people really valued it. They knew they were all in. And so I have continued to this day to manage and grow my own coaching business. I coach entrepreneurs and leaders, CEOs, founders. But then actually more than half of our business now is also coaching other coaches and speakers. And we really focus in on what we call the authority bridge, which is helping leaders and entrepreneurs, high achievers, to actually build a side business with coaching and speaking and that kind of thing. So that's a long-winded story of how I got here.
Well, going back, like you with 2 businesses in the middle of town, you chose the right one. You could have gone work for the strip club. So I tried to work.
You know what? I thought of it. I'll tell you one of the funniest things. Marty, the owner of the bike shop, I'd never been to a strip club. I can say to this day, I still haven't been to a strip club. But the owner of the bike shop, he held me as capable. And he stretched me. And I'll never forget, I'd gone to this selling school. I felt like I knew what I was doing. I was passionate about bikes. But being around the corner from the strip club, we had people come in, right? And I'll never forget, I've never told this story before, Josh, not on a podcast, that's for sure. But one of my first selling experiences after that Schwinn selling school is a woman came in, bikini top, short shorts with tassels, no shoes. And she came in and Marty's like, got a customer. And I look out, I'm 14 at the time. My voice is cracking, right? He's like, you got a customer. I'm like, what? Marty, me? And he's like, hey, handle it. So I went out and she's like, I want a big bike, the kind of bike I have to swing my leg over. And I'm like, I about passed out, but I sold her a bike. She walked out pleased as punch. And I think I lost all the color in my face, but that was one of my early selling experiences of learning how to stay focused during a selling scenario.
Stay focused. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, that's cool. So, and great backdrop as well. So I want to transition into the faith element of it. Like you're clear that faith is a part of your business strategy. And you've worked a lot in the corporate world, and that is just, at least over the last 10, 15 years, that's not been something that's generally been accepted. So what does that look like in real world decisions, coaching, especially these leaders that are in a corporate position?
100%. Well, one of the things I will tell you, just, when I first started my business, we were coming out of a life-changing experience of my wife being healed from cancer. And that's a whole long story we could get into, but I mean, it was miraculous at the level that it really got my attention. And I started to be introduced to the power of prayer at a whole other level. And I was committed, like God was moving in our lives. And I wanted to do everything for God. So I went to this coach training program. I came back not knowing what I was doing, especially business wise. And I prayed, I'm like, God, I'm going to be a Christian coach. And I felt God just in my heart of hearts say, please don't be a coach that's a Christian. Don't be a Christian coach. I want you to work with people that haven't come into a church in 2 decades. I want you to work with people who are curious, but not sure. He's like, let your faith be a curiosity. Don't have it be a debate. And what I love about that is, I don't know about you, my brother is amazing. I have an older brother and he is a full-time missionary in Australia. And we talk about it all the time. I feel like I'm a full-time missionary in the marketplace, which is by definition the largest missionary field in the world, right?
Yeah.
And I say the way that we can be most effective as missionaries in the marketplace is to be a raging curiosity. Bring excellence, bring solutions that make people go, how did you come up with that idea? Be encouraging, be grace-filled, be strong, right? Be bold, be courageous, all those things. And it's like, St. Francis of Assisi said, spread the gospel and if needed, use words. And so, I often, when I'm giving, keynotes to large organizations and conferences, some will be very clear. Hey, listen, no faith-based stuff here. And I'm like, hey, that's fine. Right. But everything I teach is based on biblical principles. So I might have a slide that has a timeless quote that says Jewish proverb. That's okay. Right. Middle Eastern proverb. Right. And I'm putting, like, people come up all the time, like, how'd you get away with that? It's like, well, one, it's God's truth. So it's going to resonate. And you can give credit where credit's due, but sometimes we don't have to use all those words that, get in the way. But then with my coaching clients too, I always say to my coaching clients, hey, I pray before every session. And if that's your jam, then I'll wait and do it with you. If that's not your brand of vodka, no sweat. I'll just do it before we get on. And most people will say, I'll take 2 scoops of that, like whether that's a big thing for them or not. But God will even work through that. Like I was working with a high level executive, one of my coaching clients, and she said, yeah, I'll take prayer. So we're kicking off the session with prayer. And I always pray, for blessings, if they're married, blessings over their marriage, if they've got a family, blessings over their family, blessing over their home, blessing over their business, blessing over their current work, their future work, all those things. And while I'm saying a blessing over her home, after, like a blessing over your home, I get this nudge from God, say homes, not home. Now, I don't know. Like, I know basically where she lives, our business profiles. I have an address for her so we can mail things to her. So I know she has a home. but I get this nudge, say Holmes, stop and say Holmes. So I said, actually a blessing over her homes. Lord, I just pray a blessing over her homes. And we're on Zoom. I'll never forget it. We're on Zoom. She has her eyes closed and her eyes pop open. And so, I continue with the prayer, get done with the prayer. And she's like, how did you know? I was like, how did I know what? And she goes, my husband and I bought a second home last night. It's our dream home. It's our summer home. And all night, I stayed up all night wondering. She's like, I tithe. We're active at our church. But all night, I just had this feeling, what does God think about us buying this home? And I said, well, I'd say he's good with it because I just got the nudge to say homes and I didn't know that story. She's like, you didn't know that story. It's my husband and my lawyer. They're the only people that know that story. So I guess God is okay with it, and that's the kind of thing to me. It's like being a raging curiosity of encouragement and excellence. That's how we, encourage people to maybe believe that God loves them and God wants to work in their life.
Yeah, I love it because that's the same way I lead is through curiosity and
Yeah.
being the example, not the one with the megaphone on the street corner. And
Exactly right. Debating. Yeah, that's the thing. A shotgun wedding, that doesn't create love, right? Like
well, I think
there's
where it came
nobody that's
from
been
too.
debated into heaven.
No, exactly. Well, and you can have respectful debate amongst
For
two people
sure.
that can hold space for each other's opinions, but the vast majority of society is not open to that right now. But I
Right?
think where it came from for me is like, my father is a believer, but he got really pushed away from the church. It was because
Mm.
people were really pressuring him, and that doesn't work for his personality nor mine.
Yep.
Um, and so I have that context. And then I also have the context of when I owned my financial firm, it was with a Fortune 100 company as over the top of it. And it was just this really interesting time over the last 10 years, right? We have this
Yeah.
huge DEI push, which I'm an advocate for some of the teachings of that. Some of them I'm not. But at the same time, they were telling me I couldn't speak about my Christianity and my beliefs because it could offend someone. And it just
Wow.
always wrestled with my soul as like, wait, so me as the leader to be accepting of everyone else, but them not to be accepted of me. Because it's not
Yep.
just what I believe, it's who I am. And I think you would
Right?
agree in that, right? It's part
Yeah.
of who we are. So you're shutting down a part of who we are while at the same time asking us to accept everything about everyone else.
Yep. It's crazy. And it's interesting. I mentioned I'm an extreme personality. I think you are too, right? And in high school, I started to fall in love with American history. And I got hit with this question in high school. How do they teach American history in England? How do they teach about the American Revolution
That's
in
a good
England?
question.
And so I went my first year of college, I went to England and went to college, and I took American history and medieval history over there. And what's interesting is that, especially at the college and university level, they teach basically two different types of classes each week. One is a lecture where you go and sit and you're lectured, and then there's the tutorial, which you go. The lecture might be a group of 150 students, but tutorials usually the professor and maybe three other students, and the whole thing with the tutorial is to debate. And sometimes the professor will come in and throw out an idea, and he might or she might totally disagree with that idea, but he or she throws it out just to see what you'll do with it, right? And the whole goal through Socratic method is to fight it out in an honoring way. Now, not everybody does it perfectly, but I can tell you, if you grow up in that, where healthy debate is not an offense but an expectation, it creates better relationships. It creates better understanding. It creates, better respect of each other's perspectives. And I can tell you, I miss that approach. And again, England is not a perfect country by any means, but I can tell you the people that have had that experience are a lot more open to have healthy conversations on things they don't disagree with. And the last thing they would say is, hey, don't offend me, right? It's like more, hey, why do you believe what you believe?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's really good. And so I want to follow this up with, because I know you work with both corporate and entrepreneurs. And I do
Yeah.
believe, because I've been in both spaces, that being in corporate is a bit harder to
Yeah.
express your faith and than running your own business. You're the one that cuts the checks. You got the freedom to be able to speak how you want to speak,
Right.
at least a bit more. How
Yeah.
are you coaching leaders to integrate their faith into their business?
That's a great question. I love this conversation. And, it's the uh, somewhat frustrating response of, it depends, right? Some
Yeah,
are environments where they have a higher level of leadership, but they also have a culture or maybe an HR regime that doesn't allow anything, right? And I always say, hey, at the very least, you can always model what you believe. And even in the tightest HR environments, and it is interesting how it tends to often be selective in that what is shut down is often like Christian perspective. Like a lot of people are able to talk about whatever they want to, as long as it's not more of the commonly held beliefs or whatever. But that's fine. It's the thing of being able to say, hey, if you live it in a way that it makes people curious about who you are, how you make the decisions that you do, wonder why you're grace filled when everybody else is losing their minds and also their ability to communicate and effectively focus. If you can be a raging curiosity, that tends to be the best conversation starter. And I can say, what's interesting about the tightest of HR environments is if somebody comes to you and asks you questions, that often if they're asking the questions and saying, no, I'd really like to know, why do you believe what you believe, or why do you act the way that you do? If that person asks the questions, it can open the door to a very legal conversation, those kinds of things. But I know my faith is bolstered because I sat next to a person when I got promoted into that training department, helping to manage that training department. It was one of those environments where you had to be very intentional, and we were teaching classes pretty much 24/7, 365. You've been in those kind of environments where we were training new reps, we were training on ethics, we were training on new drugs, we were training on everything, just always in the training room. And so they always talk to us about, hey, you can't share your faith, whatever your faith is, these are the guidelines on a number of different things. But a person sitting next to me, a guy named Peter Stuckeman, Peter boldly put a Bible on his bookshelf, and he had a very small bookshelf, but we were in those, it was in the era of open cubicles.
yeah,
Here we are
yeah,
managing a $2 billion training department, and we're in open top cubicles. And he put his bookshelf up high enough, so basically the only book sticking out over his cubicle, you can see the title, Holy Bible, right? And everybody was like, it was always funny because he never said anything like, hey, I'm doing Bible study classes on Wednesday morning, right? He just had that Bible sitting there. And then that was totally okay. It was definitely a curiosity. But what I noticed in sitting next to him in that cubicle, especially when I first started working next to him, was that the most boisterous, the most sometimes caustic people, when they had a low day or when they had a setback, they would come around the corner and sneak into Peter's cubicle and start asking him big life questions. And it was really interesting to just see what that Bible, and sometimes you'd hear it, sometimes he'd slide it off, and sometimes he'd talk about the Bible, but most of the time it was just a signal that let people know, hey, if you got questions, come and talk to me. And that's what I found is if people are asking you questions, that tends to be the best place to start a
yeah,
conversation like that. So I always say, start by being an example, start by bringing excellence, having grace, having boundaries, with courageous, with courage, but also with compassion. Like, those people that oftentimes are so fired up and so opinionated, it's like, well, nobody's listening to them anyway. So it's that thing. If you can have compassion and courage but still have hard conversations, that's a person that you want to get to know, that's a person you want to trust, and then those conversations can happen. And what I love is that God works through us. but he can do it a billion different ways, right? I think when we start to put pressure on ourselves to say, oh, I've got to be the example, like God needs me to be a martyr in my corporate space. Like, nah, God wants you to be a curiosity, but do it with love. Don't do it with, debate and
Yeah.
stances. Yeah.
No, that's where I had a great example of that as well. I had an advisor of mine that uh, I was mentoring and mentored for years. I knew he was a professed atheist, but he had a law degree, so he was smarter than everyone.
Right.
So he came into my office with a marital problem, though,
Hmm.
and asked me how I deal with stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I got to express, my faith and my word and how God's at the center of it. And I could see this like deep contemplation on his face. And he goes, "It must be nice for you." And
Wow.
I said, "It is.
Yeah.
And it could be nice for you too." He goes, "I don't know about that." I said, "Well, you don't have to know about it right now.
Yeah.
You got to explore it, because otherwise you're left with nothing." Because he's married to another atheist and they share that belief anyhow, but they were really struggling. And got to share, my wisdom, and whether or not he took to it, or, who knows, whether or not
Yeah.
maybe it was just a drop in the ocean to him that could precipitate him figuring out later in life that
Right.
that's what
Yeah. It's not
what he
completely on
believes.
your shoulders, right? Like we're called to plant seeds in the season that somebody's in, whether we have a conversation with a cashier or a barista, or whether it's somebody you're mentoring over years. Like we don't have to be the one that gets them all the way into heaven. We just get to play a part in walking alongside them, whether it's for 5 minutes or 5 years or more. Right. So I love that. You weren't debating him into heaven. You were just showing him what you believe. And he could see the fruit of that. He could
Yeah,
see you having peace. He could see you and your wife actually, living life and enjoying life and probably experiencing joy that maybe didn't feel possible for him. So yeah, you
well, it
got to plant those
precipitates
seeds.
questions, right? Like, so he
Yep.
go, "Well, why is my marriage not happy and his is?" Well,
Yep.
there's a question there, and there's an
Yep.
answer. It's not because of happenstance, right?
Right.
There's like, you
It's
could
not
believe that
accidental.
it's not accidental, right? So when questions arise, then they can start thinking more deeply and actually figure out what's true for them, what they want to believe going forward. And a
Yep.
different example, I met someone earlier this year at a mastermind, and I know he'll be listening to this because he listens to the podcast now. But leading by example,
Yep.
expressing what I believe, and he was on that curiosity faith walk, and he asked me what Bible I think is best. And he's a leader of a company. I said, "Well, for me to understand better is not just to pick up, the English Standard Version and try and read from front to back." I was like, "I really enjoy John Maxwell's Leadership Bible, because I
Yeah.
can read the context of the stories and get his leadership perspective to understand what the Word of God is saying more." Well, happy to report I was out visiting him a week or two ago, and he's almost done with it. He absolutely loved it.
Wow.
So it's just
Wow.
incredible. Like, some people are ready to take that leap,
Yep.
and some people
Yep.
may never take that leap. Your calling is to be that beacon,
Yep.
and lead by example, and plant those seeds, like you mentioned.
Yep. So true. I love that. And it's like it's making the Bible accessible because, there's a lot of different ways to do it, different seasons. I don't know about you, but different seasons. I just fall in love with different Bibles. I've got one right now that's a keyword study Bible that allows you to go deep on different Hebrew and Greek words. And I nerd out on stuff like that. But, especially 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, probably, that wouldn't have resonated with me at all. I needed a different study Bible that allowed me to get context or allowed me to apply it daily. So it's
You need the
amazing the
big pictures
resources
and big
we have.
words.
Right,
Big
exactly
pictures, big
right.
words,
Big
15, 20
and
years
like
ago.
coloring, if there's coloring available.
That's
So I
right.
love it. I've got
But
a Bible. I don't know if you've seen it, but there's an archaeological study Bible. And I had a group, I was leading a group of teenage boys. And I had, we have two sons and they were teenagers. So I kind of understood what you needed to do to kind of engage teenage boys, but still 15 boys at the end of a long day And oftentimes in church settings, they want boys to sit around in circles and talk. And I'm like, good gosh, that's going to work a little bit, but not a lot. So this archaeological study Bible, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but what it does is it walks through the archaeology, a lot of these stories. So I would bring the archaeological study Bible and I would flip open to a picture and be like, okay, guys, we just read about the walls of Jericho falling. And it would be interesting. That would be a good story if it was a Hollywood movie or if it was a myth. But look at this picture of the walls of Jericho that they just dug up. And look at this part of the walls of Jericho. Like, what do you suppose that part of the wall that's sticking up higher than any other thing than on that wall? And one of the guys, teenage boys, goes, is that where Rahab lived? It's like, well, kind of what they're thinking. And then the boys crowded around like, wait, what? All that kind of stuff. It's like making that stuff live. Now, again, archaeological Bible, that's not going to light everybody up, but boy, it was a great tool for teenage boys.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. Well, kind of on this topic is you created a guide called 11 Prayers for Building a Coaching Business You Love.
Yeah.
What was going on in your life when those prayers became a necessity?
I can tell you for me, like I mentioned, my wife went through a cancer experience and we experienced 6 miracles in one day, which it was hard to explain away. And I grew up in a really great church, really community oriented church, but prayer wasn't a big thing. And so I kind of had to learn prayer in different ways, in different stages of my life. And the cancer experience with my wife really did bring prayer to the forefront. And I really clung to it. But I then, I could see God and obviously had seen him work in the church. I had seen him work in hospitals, but there was a part of my mind and my heart that wasn't quite sure he could work in the business place. Like almost in my mind, Josh, you'll understand this. Like I think in my mind, I was thinking, well, when I got in my car and drove away to my job, that God would be like waving, saying, okay, see you when you get home. You're like going to the workplace, can't go over there. It's like, but when you look at the Bible, there's story after story. Like some of Jesus' biggest, best miracles were marketplace miracles. Like if you do the math on turning water into wine, the best wine ever tasted by that, that professional party organizer, he said, this is the best wine I've ever tasted. That wine would probably be worth about $150,000. That's a marketplace miracle. The feeding 5,000, like think about how many filet of fish sandwiches it would take to feed 5,000 men and their families. That's a marketplace miracle, right?
Well,
So I started to think,
fish was a bit better than McDonald's.
I'm guessing so. I'm hoping so, right? If it said that there was enough left over and they were satisfied, that wasn't filet o fish.
Yeah.
Right. But it's like, wait a second. There's marketplace miracles all over the Bible. So I'm guessing that God still wants to talk to us in our work, in our business. And he's been incredibly generous to us in giving me guidance and giving me peace and giving me favor. And so I just realized that, prayer, some people say I had a conversation with somebody and they're like, gosh, faith, prayer, that just sounds like a crutch. And I'm like, well, yep. And it's a crutch I need. I am happy to admit it. And I said, hey, I understand the neuroscience of what's going on in my brain when I stop and pray. And some people try to put meditation and prayer in the same camp. And some of the things that happen in our brain are similar, and that's fine. But I said, take all of the benefits, the health benefits of meditation, and put on top of that, getting to talk to the creator of the universe. That seems almost like an unfair advantage when it comes to the marketplace. And I will say there have been times where God has given me direction that went against logic or went against understanding or went against what the market would say. And that was absolutely the right call. And there's times where he saved our business or introduced me to the right client at the right time, that kind of stuff. So I just realized like these are prayers. The 11 that we put in are prayers that I lean on a regular basis. And what's beautiful about it, we train up a lot of coaches and speakers, and so we geared it towards that. But really, it's something that anybody in a leadership capacity, even in a parental capacity, these are prayers that will allow you to take your day to day and bring prayer into it, whether it's for direction, encouragement, guidance, discernment, whatever it is. There's those 11 prayers cover a lot of the challenges and opportunities that we face in the marketplace.
It's so good. So good. Um, so in the marketplace, you teach others how to get their first clients.
Yeah.
How do you go? Because I think it doesn't matter. Like, you and I are both coaches,
Yep.
but it doesn't matter if you're a coach, if you're a landscape owner, it doesn't matter
Right.
if you're running a marketing agency. We got to get our first clients, and then we got to get
Yep.
many more.
Yep.
So how do you go about getting yours, and what can you teach the entrepreneurs listening about getting more clients?
Absolutely. So, what's interesting is that like I mentioned before, a lot of the people that we train up to be coaches and speakers are people who are already successful in an industry, in a field, in a career track, and they just want to add coaching and speaking as an additional revenue stream, as an additional way to have impact, as an additional way to mix things up and experience some new things in their life. And so, what's great about it is that oftentimes those people have a wealth of expertise and knowledge and experiences that the world needs, but they're going to be the first person to say, I'm not good at selling myself. I'm not good at like, they think like I'm not good at selling something or convincing someone to hire me as a coach. I'm not good at that stuff. And it's like, well, don't be that yet. We always say like, hey, bring value first, right? Build relationship first, and then the relationships will form. And of course, there's important ways and easier paths to be able to onboard great clients. But I always say start not by ego driven promotion, start by value driven promotion. So one of
Yeah.
the things we talk about is we have a process called the authority bridge, and it's a 3-phase process, especially for people who are leaders, rock stars, entrepreneurs, people that want to, again, coach and consult and speak on the side, at least initially, and then build businesses that way. And this 3-phase process, the first phase of the authority bridge is what we call covered authority. And that's where someone is in a full-time position. There's something that gives them experience, gives them exposure, helps them to build networks, all of those, and start to teach from that place. You don't have to announce your coaching. You don't have to announce your speaking. Just start teaching from your journey. We call that covered authority. And then over time, that can become what we call emerging authority, which is phase 2. And that's where you can start to have a coaching or a speaking website so people can really know, hey, I can hire this person to do this, that kind of thing. And then the third phase is what we call independent authority. And that's where, and not everybody has to do it, but that's where people then become full-time coaching, speaking, consulting, and make all their revenue from that. But what's beautiful about the covered authority phase is we always say, hey, at least get started, start to build that muscle of putting out content that allows you to bring value, right? To start to build trust, that allows you to start to build the muscle of putting out, teachings from your journey. And what's beautiful about that is with a lot of our folks, we teach one strategy of doing one post a week in that way. We call it a lighthouse post because people find it. But what's interesting is that when people start to see that, they start to expect it, start to build relationship with you and it does start to build trust. And with a lot of our folks, especially if they're writing to their ideal client, basically, teaching from their journey, teaching from the people that they're helping, all of those things. What's interesting is their ideal clients will often raise their hand and say, you just described me, or I needed that strategy today. We had somebody the other day, they haven't even launched their website yet. We got their coaching packages in order. We got, speaking proposal and one sheet in order. So they were ready when somebody said yes, but they hadn't even launched yet. And he sold a $10,000 coaching package because somebody was like, hey, I've been following each and every one of your posts. They're all hitting, like you're like reading my mail every freaking morning. So I just like take my money. How do I do this? So I always say, start by bringing value first. And, of course, have the systems so that onboarding doesn't have to be awkward. It doesn't have to be weird. It certainly doesn't have to be manipulative, but start by creating that, delivering that consistent value, not in a Kardashian, I've got to be on Instagram 24/7 kind of way, but even just once a week in a consistent way can be the best way to start it in a really sustainable way that you could be proud of.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I mean, this podcast is very much that as well.
Right.
Like we spend a lot of money on the podcast. Though we don't take any advertisements, sponsors,
Yep.
anything of that nature, and it's a way to get out once a week. You could do a podcast multiple times a week. For me, I'm too busy to do a lot of times even just one a week. So it's
Yep.
it just depends on your schedule, but it's another way to add value into people's lives. Speaking for free at first. Right.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of speaking engagements for free. I just told my team in our last quarterly review that we can't do that moving forward just based on my schedule. And then your price will go up as your demand goes up. And so,
Yep.
but getting your way out there, leveraging the current relationships you have to do some stuff pro bono to add value to their world. And then if you do a great job, they're going to go, hey, I'd like to have you back more. Let's discuss what
Yep.
that looks like.
Absolutely. It's huge. And it is. And part of it is, people say like, how do I get into coaching? How do I get into speaking? And one of the things we always say is if you want to get into speaking, speak. I mean, I know that sounds crazy, but that's exactly what you're talking about. Look for those opportunities to speak because it is a muscle. And learning how to move a room is different than just relaying information. So that is a skill set too. So it's learn the craft, practice the craft. And we have people charging now more than they ever like imagined. We had just somebody recently got paid basically for one gig more than what he used to make in a year, which is great. And he's not a household name, right? But consistent content, great content to a specific group of people. And he was just blown away. That was one of my favorite emails of all time. But it started with that. Like, I know for me, my first, speaking gig was in the basement of our church. I was hoping we'd have 50 people. We had 4. We were in a room that had recently been flooded, so it smelled more like feet and mushrooms than, the Hyatt or the Marriott. But like that's where it starts. And I don't know about you, but I think that God also honors obedience, right? And I was going to show up and deliver whether there was 440 or 400 people. And what's interesting is fast forward 6 months later, I was asked to then keynote at a conference at the same church, and there were 400 people in that room, right? But it started in a room that smelled like feet and mushrooms. And that's where it has to start. It has to start in the non-sexy, messy places. But that's also like, it's a blessing. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want to be famous and start a speaking career. It's much better to start it in those rooms of 4 because you can mess it up and learn and get ready for those big opportunities.
Well, that's the thing I think you hit on is entrepreneurship has been glorified on social media nowadays. And like everyone can do it and everyone should do it. And that is not the case.
It's
because entrepreneurship starts in mushroom smelling, foot smelling basements. And sometimes
basements will look more like Fight Club than anything. Yeah,
that's right. And sometimes you climb a mountain, you get out of those basements and you fall right back into them. It's a constant evolution, constant roller coaster, and it's constant pulling yourself back up even when you don't want to, leaning into God's word and trying to figure it out until you get to a point where you have some critical mass, you get that flywheel moving.
Exactly. Well, and I know you do a lot of mentoring of entrepreneurs and leaders because people invest in themselves. But I do think as people move into entrepreneurship, it's a really strange phenomenon, especially with entrepreneurship, that most people realize they're going to need an education in a specific field in order to, grow in that. You might go to college, you might go to a trade school, whatever it is. Most people invest in education of some form for a career track. But oftentimes with entrepreneurship, I think there's this weird subconscious belief that you're either naturally an entrepreneur or not. But entrepreneurship is a set of skills. And there are some people that are better at risk. There are some people that might be more, adept at creativity or finding solutions. There might be some people that are just better at relationships and people, all of that. But honestly, entrepreneurship is a set of skills and it's a toolbox. So, I know I don't have to tell your audience to do this because they're already doing it. They're investing in time with you and all of that. But if you're thinking about being an entrepreneur or you are an entrepreneur, you got to invest in that skill set.
Yeah.
And I know for me, that's like some of my biggest breakthroughs are on the backside of making huge investments in coaching or training. And it's going, oh, right. I shouldn't have just naturally known that. I need to be learning from somebody who's done it.
Yeah, someone that's a little bit further down the road than we are, or a lot of
Right.
it in some cases. But the other investment that you may have to make, because Alec, on my team, like I'm not wired to be a great marketer. I'm not wired to know this technology behind this podcast.
Yep.
So for me to go and try and invest money in that, and when it's not in my natural proclivities, I'm not ever going to be great at it. Sometimes the investment is in someone that's just vastly better at things than you are.
100%. Get people in their zones of genius, right? Like I know for me, I've got 2 podcasts, and if it was up to me, like I record, right? I put a little bit of information together, I do the research, I record, and then I hand all that stuff off, because if that was on me, there, like, no episode would ever see the light of day. But boy, when you get it to people that then can take that audio file and really do some great stuff with it, or take, video and be able to split it up in ways that make it even more engaging, like that's somebody else's zone of genius. That is not mine. But boy, how great is that when you also have a team of people that, like, I know my team, none of them want to do what I do. Right now, like my assistant is amazing at so many things. She's organized and she's an incredible communicator. She's really good with Canva, all these things, right? And she looks at my job and go, keep it. Like, I don't want anything of what you do, but boy, I do this skill set and it makes my life so much more peaceful, so much more fun. And I get to pay her well to do the stuff she's really good at. So I couldn't agree with you more. It is, I mean, training is one and team is another of those investments. It takes some time. You got to sort some things out, finding the right people. But boy, when you do, that makes all the difference. And it allows you to stay in your zone of genius more often.
That's right. I think it's one of the first big epiphanies I had in being, or thinking about hiring my first person, was like, wait, there's people out there that love to do what I hate doing.
Exactly. And they don't feel bad about it at all, right? Like they love it. And you're like, somebody actually likes accounting. You like tax work? Like, right? And my accountant loves it. Loves it. He loves pouring over IRS code. And I'm like, I appreciate it. I want to know code because I want to pay every penny I owe and not a penny more. So I understand it. But I'm like, dude, I don't want to wait and watch all these updates, all this stuff. So yeah, hire the right people so your focus can stay on the right things for you.
That's right. Well, we talked about what it looks like to start and acquire customers, clients, whatever it may be. Let's talk about what does it look like to build a business that grows without losing your soul.
Yeah, that's big, right? Because for me, that was a real concern. As the business grew, I had to really learn that I had some head junk around money. I don't know if that was you, but like my parents are amazing, but we grew up in a small town in Iowa. There were people with money, but a lot of the people in town were kind of skeptical of the wealthy people in our town. And I realized as our company was starting to grow, there was concerns that, I almost started to sabotage myself because I didn't want to be one of those people. Right? Oftentimes I think, when we would look at somebody wealthy, it would be easy to assume, especially growing up where I grew up, like, hey, if that person's wealthy, that probably means they took money from somebody else, or they got that money by, means that maybe were less than moral, all those things. Right. And it's go, wait, I'll never forget. I sat down with a builder and the smallest home that he was building at the time was 3 million. But then he was building on average $10 million homes at a time where the economy was not great. And I'll never forget, I sat down in his home, and his living room, I think, was like 3 to 4 stories. The ceiling, it was the highest ceiling of any home I've ever been in. It was absolutely breathtaking and beautiful. And we were talking about this subject because our business was really starting to grow. And I think I was aware, like I was starting to feel inner tension, but I don't think I could have necessarily put my finger on that thing. But the morning I was having this meeting, God put it on my heart to talk to this builder about money. And he was a great guy, it still is, Jesus guy. And we were sitting in this beautiful living room, and furniture gorgeous and just well appointed across the board. And I'll never forget, there was a box of nails on his coffee table. He's a builder, so stuffs around and things. And I was like, hey, talk to me about your perspectives on money, because obviously, your business has grown. It's very profitable. You employ a lot of people. What's your perspective on money? I'm kind of expecting him to pull out a take on Jesus and the young ruler, saying you got to sell everything and all this kind of stuff. And it was interesting because he picked up this box of nails and he shook the box of nails, and he goes, I realized my heart was good when I had the same emotional attachment to dollar bills as I did the nails in this box.
Mm.
And I'm like, what? And he goes, to build a beautiful home like this, you need nails, and you also need dollar bills. He said, dollar bills are a tool. He said, I could fall in love with nails, but that doesn't make a lot of sense. I could fall in love with dollar bills. But honestly, if I have the same emotional connection to dollar bills as I do nails, I'm good. And he said,
That's
what's
wise.
amazing is these dollar bills and these nails will also build houses for people that don't have homes in Haiti. They'll build, homes for people on the other side of town that don't have homes. I can do a lot of good with this box of nails, and I can do a lot of good with a stack of bills. He said, so I just don't fall in love with the nails. I don't fall in love with the stack of bills. I just remember both are tools. I ask God, where do you want me to use those tools? What do you want me to do today? And he said, sometimes God will, ask me some hard questions and call me to do things that feel like a stretch or a risk. And sometimes God will tell me to buy a second house, or sometimes God will, call me to buy a boat on a lake. Like he actually told the story, like God called me to buy a boat and be on a lake, very affluent lake, beautiful boat. And at first he confessed, he was like, I was a little worried that like, maybe I'm not hearing from God. Maybe I'm, maybe I've lost, touch with what God's asking me to do. Maybe I'm fully on ego. And God was just guiding him, saying, hey, you can believe that, but what if you trusted me? Does this feel like other times I've directed you? And he said, yeah. And so he bought this big, beautiful boat, took it on this lake, had a way to have it hoist on a lake that he had access to. And he said he had some of the most incredible conversations about faith and Jesus and the Bible with wildly successful people who haven't felt comfortable in a church in decades. Here they were, floating around in $300,000 boats, living in multi-million dollar homes, and they're wondering if God actually loves them or not.
Mm.
And because he had a boat, big, beautiful boat that was a curiosity on this particular lake, my mentor was like, I didn't realize it, but God was calling me to be a mission, be on mission, be a missionary in one of the most challenging mission fields in the world, and that is affluence. And he said, and one of the ways you do that is to be a curiosity. He said, but boy, I have to check my heart every day, because there's those things can still snag you over there. And you can start to go kind of Nebuchadnezzar, like, I did this. It's like, so I gotta watch out for that. Right. But boy, if I stay on point and I keep the emotional attachment that I have to these nails, to the dollar bills, It's like God works through me, and I have some amazing conversations because of it in places he said that you would be shocked by. So I love that.
It's a great story and great perspective. I love the emotional attachment because money is a tool. And
Yep.
what I think about money is that if you're a bad person without money, you become a worse one with it. And
Yep.
conversely, if you're a good person with money, you become a better person with it.
Yep.
It's a tool and an accentuator of who you are in your soul.
100%. And it's wild because there are good people who have a lot of money, and there are good people that don't have a lot of money. There are also people that don't have a lot of money that are not good, right? Like that have a dark heart, that do evil things. And there are a lot of people that have money that have a dark heart and do evil things. So yeah, it's that thing of going, oh, wait, the money's not the thing, right? The heart. And you're right. Money does make whoever we are, it tends to be more, right? Because we can do more things, we can touch more people, we can have more impact. But it's amazing how, again, if you get the right perspective on that money, how that can be an incredibly positive, experience and a huge blessing in your community, in your church, everywhere you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, man, we burned through time. Let me ask
Yeah,
this
boy.
question before we get to my closing. For the person listening who feels unqualified, because you brought up head junk before, I call it head trash, but we all
Yep.
have it.
Yep.
So they feel unqualified. They believe they need more time or more credentials or more clarity. What do you say to them?
What I love about that is, especially when I'm talking with people that are in our authority bridge process, that person that's wanting to have more impact, that's wanting to have more income. And one of the ways they think about doing that is through coaching or speaking or consulting. Often they will have that. And some people call it imposter syndrome. And I think that's a recognizable thing. By the way, I think imposter syndrome would probably be better defined as winner syndrome. Because what's interesting about imposter syndrome is lazy people who binge Netflix 24/7 don't ever experience imposter syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
You only experience imposter syndrome when you are stepping into something new, when you are stepping into something bigger, right? That's when you experience imposter syndrome. When you get asked to speak, when you get asked to mentor someone, when you get asked it to have impact. And the imposter syndrome is just a part of your brain, that's trying to keep you safe, right? It's just trying to say, hey, they might figure out you're a fake. They might figure out it was just luck, all those things, right? It's just a part of your brain that's chirping. But again, that part of your brain is just trying to keep you safe. But it only happens for people who are winning, right? So I always say, hey, it might be imposter syndrome, but winner syndrome might be the same thing. But I say to that person that says, I need more experience. I need more authority. I don't have enough wisdom. I don't have enough knowledge. I don't have enough experience. I always say, hey, you think you need to teach from the destination. But the best teachers that I know of, whether it's coaches, speakers, consultants, they are people who are not waiting to teach from a destination. They are people who are teaching from the journey, right? Like I see the way you teach, right? You never say, hey, I have it all figured out. I know all the answers, learn from me. You constantly teach from the journey. Like, hey guys, this is what I'm learning this week, or this is where I screwed up and this is how I fixed it, right? And what's beautiful about teaching from the journey is you will never run out of content, and there is no shelf life on teaching from the journey. I always say, like, especially for our people that are thinking about being speakers, I said, gold medals are fantastic. So if you can go to the Olympics and win a gold medal, I said, God bless you, do it. But gold medals and being a speaker, gold medals have a shelf life. What's interesting is that, people who make big money from winning a gold medal, often they can make that big money for about maybe 1 to 2 Olympics afterwards. And then they're replaced by that next gold medal winner. But if you are teaching from the journey and you are ravenously curious and you are willing to be transparent and open, and you are willing to truly teach what you are learning, both what's not going right and what is, you will never run out of content. You will always be relevant, and you will create a connection and trust that can't be established by somebody that just points to a gold medal or a mountain peak moment. And so I always say, teach from the journey, not the destination. You'll have a lot more authority than you might think.
I love it. And it's so true. Anyone that thinks they have it all figured out is a person you should run far and fast from.
That's exactly right. And we all know those people. What's interesting is that I always say the best speakers are the ones who don't want the spotlight. The best speakers are the ones that will say, screw it. I'll step into the spotlight because I feel so passionate about this subject, right? The people who feel like they're the smartest person in the room, the people that demand the spotlight, those tend to be narcissistic douchebags. And some of them are successful for a time. Some of them might even be somewhat effective communicators, but they won't move an audience. The audience won't feel that deep sense of trust, that deep sense of conviction, that deep sense of life change and transformation. That only comes when somebody's willing to teach from their journey.
Yeah. Yeah. The first example you gave there is like, that's flashy. It can be motivation, but it's not inspiration. It's not going to change your life, like you mentioned.
Yep.
You may get riled up in that moment, and it's fast. It's fades quite quickly or fast. All right.
Yep.
Last question. I ask this of everyone, and it can be on anything that we spoke on or just whatever comes to your heart. But what's an unpopular belief that you hold to be true that you think most others disagree with?
I love that question. I was curious to see where our conversation would go, because I love that you asked that question. And I love, it's always interesting. I can tell some people, as they respond to it, they're like, I was thinking about this forever. I wanted to talk about this. But you know what I mean? Like, it's like, okay, I'm just going to go for it. But like when I think about what we've talked about, we've talked about, how do you learn? And where do you go? And, the journey, all of those things, when I think about unpopular things, and I don't think this will be unpopular to your group, but it's certainly unpopular to kind of common understanding or common expectation is it's still going to be hard, right? But the hard is good. Like we talk about, like, I know, you sold your business. There was success there. You are having success now. Like, you look at your event center, it's like, damn, that thing's beautiful. Right. And you are having success. You've got your summit and your, all the things. You've got a live event coming up and it's beautiful. And there are people from the outside going, oh my gosh, Josh has got it all together. Do the clouds just part? Does he sing? Does he hear angels singing regularly? Right. But like when we started before we hit record, you were sweating because you had just been working hard on getting things done for your event, getting ducks in a row. Like, I know for me, I love to speak to, like, we teach sequence, we teach strategy, and we believe in it because we've seen it work, but also know that a key part of that is work. And it's a little bit of that, the work that nobody else sees. It's the, doing the talk to 4 people in a room that smells like mushrooms. Like, that's where success starts. And again, I know that's not necessarily unpopular to your group, to your, your tribe, but that is certainly, I think some people like, and I had somebody recently that was interested in going through our Authority Bridge process. And he was a very successful executive at a very large organization. Won't say where, you would know it immediately. And I said, I have to be honest with you. I'm not sure if you're a good fit for this program. Because it's not cheap, right? Like, like, it's not cheap. Mm-hmm. And he's like, wait, I'm ready to pay you. Like, what are you talking about? And I said, well, here's the thing is, up to this point, and he had retired. He recently retired. And he was one to do the Authority Bridge for this next season of his life. And I said, here's the thing. Up to this point, you've had a lot of people working for you. And that's fantastic. That's a core part of what you can teach on. That's a core part of where your authority is. I said, but for this to work, you're going to have to work in a different way than you've probably worked in 20 years. Because I said, you're going to be able to amass a team. You have a reserve that a lot of people don't have to build your business that you could draw on. And I'm going to encourage you to do so and to put a team together. But even that, it's going to take work. It's going to take risk. And it's a different kind of work. And it's a different kind of risk. Like you have worked hard and you have risked in the past, but this is a different type of work. It's a different type of risk. And I told him, I said, there are certain former successful executives that this is just not the thing to do. And so I said, I just want to shoot straight with you. This is going to be a different kind of work than you worked before. And he's like, it's strange. Everybody else is promising me Maseratis and mansions by Friday. No one else has. I had this conversation with. Everybody else is saying it's going to be easy. You're going to be making money in 3 weeks, like all that. And I'm like, nah, that's not. It will. You will have a pathway, but you will need to work. Are you okay with that? Are you good with that? Are you good with planting seeds and knowing that it's going to take some time to really have those grow in a way where you have a sustainable business you're going to be proud of and it's going to be paying you well for years to come? Are you good with that work? And he's like, nobody else has told me this. He said, I know I should probably be offended, but I actually want to spend money with you more than anybody else now. He's like, I don't quite understand how that happened. He's like, because everybody else is promising me mansions and Maseratis by Friday. He's like, but I want to spend my money with you. And I was like, I'm just shooting straight with you. Are you ready for that kind of work? And he's like, I am. I'm actually hungry for that kind of work. And he's like, and I appreciate you shooting straight with me. He's like, that allows me to know I'm right with the right person. So again, I know it's not necessarily controversial for your audience, but I do think it's a rare understanding, but it's also probably why your tribe is so friggin' successful.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Two things that he just taught you guys there is telling people the truth matters.
Yep.
And it builds that bridge to know, like, and trust, which is important in all sales. And he taught you a brilliant sales technique if you didn't pick up on it. Okay. So if you didn't pick up on his sales technique there, when you get someone excited about something and then you rip it away from them, they want it more.
They do. They absolutely do. They absolutely do. Yeah.
The other piece I was going to say in that is, like, you brought up the event thing. So 4 years ago, that business sale wasn't a happy sale. I fell into my biggest valley ever. But going to this event thing real quick, if everyone knew the amount of work that it took to put this thing on and how stressed I have been over the last month and how stressed my team has been, because I sat there at times over the last 30 days go, what on God's green earth made me think we could pull this off?
And humans are messy. Humans are messy. Live events are messy. Yeah.
It is, but on top of everything else we're doing, and but that being said, God put it on my heart.
Yeah.
The process, the work, everything that's gone into it has been extremely hard, and I know good things will come from it.
No doubt.
God's telling me, but man, yeah, if you knew the sleepless nights, the work that my team and I have put into it, most people would not step into that arena.
Yeah, there's no doubt. It's funny because I've got my Dream Think Do podcast and get to interview people that are, the outside world. Just about everybody I interview is at a summit moment. Maybe they're launching a book, or they just sold their business, or they're having a big breakthrough of, interviewed Oscar winners, all that stuff. And what's interesting is on the other side of the summit, on the other side of the award, on the other side of the breakthrough, there often tends to be complete breakdowns, right? There's scars and bandages and sweat, and to get to talk to people, you of course want to celebrate the summit, but also know that there are challenges with each one of those things. And that kind of goes to the hard work thing, right? Like, it's going to be hard work, and it's going to be hard work getting to the summit. It's going to be hard work getting down off the summit, but it's worth it, especially when you're doing the right things. And that's what you're doing.
That's right. I appreciate that. So where can everyone follow you, connect with you?
Yeah. So you can go to mitchmatthews.com. That's the best place to start. And it's Matthews with 2 T's. We do have some 1 tiers in our family line. They really, we're going to show the family by dropping a T. But mitchmatthews.com is a good place to start. They can also, if they want to find out more about the 11 prayers that we just talked about, we put that together as a free gift. So people can go to mitchmatthews.com/11 prayers and download that for free. And I want you to have that, all of that. And also find out, you can go to mitchmatthews.com to find out about the Authority Bridge process and sequence that we talk about quite a bit as well. So I'd love for people to visit and get to know your tribe, because again, you're doing great work, my man, and it's such an honor to get to talk with you and just the great work that you're doing.
I appreciate that. Well, you guys heard the man. Give him a follow. Get those 11 prayers. If you do anything else, like get those 11 prayers. He's giving away for free. They're obviously impactful. He's used them with thousands of people, including himself. Again, he's sharing his journey. So get those 11 prayers. You know what to do. Share this episode far and wide. This has been such a spirit-filled, great conversation. Just a real conversation. I appreciate Mitch's time as well. And remember, the good and greater the enemies is possible. Lead like a Spartan today.
This is Sparta!